The film was written before the Me Too movement. I will tell you that. It was written in January of 2016, and the Me Too movement really began in August of 2016. No, excuse me, 2017. It was only a year ago, August, which is crazy. It is a movie about trauma, and trauma is the residual effect of violence. We know that. We know that through history. We've studied history. I'm reading a book right now about the First World War, and your country, your generation of young boys had their lives ended and ruined by the trauma of World War I. And then their families, their children and grandchildren suffered the same trauma because it's generational, because it gets passed on if it's not worked out. And so this is a movie about generational trauma. And the pivot, as you said, is focusing on, you know, your fascination, my fascination. What happens to these people the next day? And in that fascination, I believe that Laurie Strode in 1978, on November 1st, went back to school. See, I think she went back to school with a bandage on her arm. And instead of being the Laurie that raised her hand, who knew all the answers, who was popular, she was a bit of a nerd, she had friends, she was a dreamer, she was an intellectual, she had her whole life ahead of her, she was a romantic, she dreamt about a boy and she being alone together and touching and kissing, and you know what I mean? And on November 1st, she went back to school and she was a freak. Nobody talked to her. Everybody pointed at her and looked at her and was like, oh my God, there's Laurie Strode. Oh, look, there she is. Oh. And that's what trauma does. It takes away your innocence, your life force, and it leaves you with a stain and a badge and a mark of trauma. And you have to have help. And we know that. And this is a movie about a woman who didn't get that kind of help. But that's the beauty of the Me Too movement, which is just ironic that we made a movie about it before it was a thing. Because that's exactly what's happening. Women and men all over the world are starting to stand up and say, this happened to me, but it does not have to be the definition of me. It is an experience in my life, but if I can talk about it, and by the way, I don't know how much of a student of history you are, even the Truth and Reconciliation hearings in South Africa allowed that country to move forward. Can you imagine? How can they move forward as a country? But they created a way, a safe space to at least confront it and have the opportunity. And that allowed some people to move forward with their lives having been heard. And that's what the power of this time in the universe. And we made a horror movie that's super scary and people will love it. And at the core of it is trauma. But in the world, we are having a conversation that has been silenced for a very long time.